One of the most predictable and precise players' frames, this is the Tennis Warehouse racket review of the Head Speed Pro 2024. Updated for 2024, Head adds Auxetic 2 into the layup of the heaviest member of the Speed family. This uniquely flexible material optimizes feel-it contact and helps keep the racket stable. This update retains all the features you already love, like the 100 square inch head and 1820 string pattern. Players might notice slight spec changes in terms of balance and swing weight, but all in all, this remains one of our favorite precise weapons on the market. As the new year begins and we have a bunch of rackets we're testing, I'm approaching the play test as a bit of an interview for a potential new racket of choice. The Speed Pro is always a racket I've liked, but never one I've absolutely fallen in love with. And from the very first hit with this racket, I loved the feel of this racket. I think I've said this in previous iterations, but this racket feels so solid to me. And if you guys know my racket preference, I often gravitate towards stiffer setups, and the RA is nice and low, but it never felt noodly to me. I felt super connected to the ball, maybe a bit of a slightly more muted feel. For me, that all came together perfectly. I love drilling with this racket. I felt very precise with my ground strokes. I also felt dialed in at the net, and I felt like I could hit my targets really well. I will say I'm still trying to get on board with an 18x20 string pattern, and for me, I did notice a tiny bit of lack of spin potential, specifically on my serves, or specifically when switching from a more open racket to this one. And at the end of the day, I am still looking for a little bit more free power from the actual frame. And while I felt like I could get really precise, I just wanted a tiny bit more power from this racket. But all in all, definitely a Speed Pro I would put at the top of the list.
This was a really fun playtest for me to be part of because the previous version of this racket was my racket of choice over the last couple of years, and I love that racket, obviously. This one is a subtle update, I would say. I found it to feel a little bit softer, and its response, not the outgoing version needed to be any plusher, but have made this one plusher. It's got better comfort. I really like the feel. It's sweet as a nut when you find the sweet spot on this racket. Really, especially at the net when I'm volleying. I felt really dialed in on my touch shots and just loved the plush response of this updated Speed Pro. From the baseline and on serve, I noticed a slightly lower launch angle. It was minimal, but it was there, especially if I hit the Speed Pro from 2 generations ago to this one. It was a little bit more noticeable, and then going between the previous gen to this one, slightly less, but still there. And then the other big difference for me is the paint. The paint on this one has got a really soft, tactile feel to it, which is different to the gloss of the previous version. And I noticed that on my one-handed backhand because my left hand is holding the racket, and as it released out of my hand on the one-handed backhand, I just felt it didn't come out of the hand quite as smoothly, and that was obviously the biggest adjustment really for me between the two. But really nice update. If you like the existing Speed Pro, I think you're going to love this one too.
When I think of well-balanced rackets, there are a few that come to mind. However, this new 2024 evolution of Head Speed Pro might be the top of the heap. I'm just so impressed with the way this racket was put together. If there was a lot of guesswork involved, Head did a really good job at nailing it. I kind of feel like, everything from the string pattern. It is an 18 main, but it's a little wider spaced. And though it doesn't give you quite the same height of launch angle as some other 16-19s, this one gives a really good grip on the ball while still affording you a linear dagger-like slice, if you like to use that backhand wing that way. 310 grams, again, what makes this racket work for me. That's a sweet spot in terms of weight. The 100 square inch head actually affords you a little power. And again, back to the string pattern thing, the 1820, by virtue that it kind of fills up the whole hoop with strings, it kind of brings the swing weight up and just gives it a very stable feel, even outside the sweet spot. So overall, great all-court versatility. My favorite shot to hit with this, I don't really have one. I just really liked it on serve, forehand, anywhere in near the net. This virtually is what I would call a no excuse racket for me. Why I haven't switched to this racket, I don't know. It is definitely among my favorites. And I'll even throw in there that Head makes it a little more hard to make that decision, being that they make several of my very favorite rackets. Overall, fantastic play test. One of my favorite rackets of the year thus far.
I've tried a lot of versions of the Speed Pro going way back to the very first one, and I'm gonna pick up right where Mark left off, and he said well balanced. I think of this racket as very, very versatile. I think it's just a really user-friendly type of baseline racket. When I think of a true classic player's racket, I'm thinking Prestige Pro or Prestige Classic 2.0. This is much more user-friendly than that, but still retains some of that control and feel you get from the 1820 string pattern. I thought from the baseline, just really easy to use. I typically prefer rackets in the kind of 95 to 98 head size range, so this is just a really big sweet spot for me. Easy to take the ball on the rise, but still enough control from that 1820 where I could step in, attack the ball when I'm hitting flat. Really liked it at net just because it was kind of like I didn't really have to think, just kind of get the racket on the ball, easy depth. And also with this update, kind of as it's gradually become a little more soft with the flexibility. So very, very comfortable, just a user-friendly racket. It's got enough mass to feel stable, but still really maneuverable. If I had to knock it, I would just say that of all the head rackets, I prefer a couple other ones like the Radical Pro and the Prestige Pro, a little more feel, more classic for me, but just a really nice baseliner's frame. For this play test, we tried a bunch of different head poly strings, including Hawk Touch, Lynx Tour, and with the dense string pattern, we went down a bit, typically at about 50 pounds. For more information on this racket or anything tennis related, be sure to head to Tennis Warehouse, Tennis Warehouse Europe, or Tennis Only.